The chandeliers sparkled above the grand hall, casting a golden glow over balloons, ribbons, and a beautifully decorated table. At the center sat a magnificent three-tiered cake, its candles waiting to be lit, surrounded by plates, gifts, and streamers. It was the kind of celebration that looked perfect in every way, except for the one thing that mattered most. The room was empty. No children's laughter filled the air, no footsteps echoed across the marble floor. The only sound was the steady tick of the clock, each second making the silence heavier. Emily, the CEO's young daughter, sat at the long table in her wheelchair, dressed in a gown that shimmered like a princess's dress. A small tiara rested in her hair, and her face carried a fragile hope that someone, anyone, would walk through the door. She glanced at the cake, untouched and waiting, and then at the rows of empty chairs meant for friends who had promised to come. Her tiny fingers gripped the armrest of her chair, her eyes searching the quiet space for signs of life. But there were none. Lowering her head, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "Maybe they forgot." Her words broke the stillness, fragile and heartbreaking. Despite the mansion's beauty and the wealth that surrounded her, Emily felt utterly alone. That day, in a room filled with decorations and luxury, the only thing missing was what she longed for the most: companionship, laughter, and the warmth of a friend. The CEO stood quietly in the corner of the hall, his eyes fixed on his daughter. He was a man who commanded boardrooms, who made decisions that shaped entire industries, yet here, in his own home, he felt powerless. His little girl, the center of his world, sat in her wheelchair with tears hidden behind a forced smile. Every balloon he had ordered, every expensive decoration he had approved, now seemed meaningless. What good was all his wealth if it couldn't buy her happiness? He had sent out dozens of invitations, called in favors from colleagues, and made sure everything was perfect. But the perfection was hollow, because not a single guest had come. The silence of the empty hall was more painful than any business loss he had ever suffered. Watching his daughter glance again and again toward the door broke something deep inside him. He clenched his fists, feeling a helplessness he had never known. To the world, he was a powerful CEO, respected and even feared. But in this moment, he was just a father, aching because he couldn't give his child the one gift she wanted most: friends who cared. He walked toward her slowly, placing a hand on the back of her wheelchair. His throat tightened, but he tried to keep his voice steady. Inside, though, he was battling the truth: all the money in the world couldn't fill the emptiness in her heart. And that realization cut deeper than anything he had ever faced. Just as the heavy silence threatened to swallow the evening, a faint knock echoed at the grand doors of the mansion. It was so soft that at first, no one paid attention, but then it came again, gentle, hesitant, almost afraid. The guard hurried to the gate, expecting perhaps a late guest, but what he saw surprised him. There stood a boy, no older than 10, his clothes worn and slightly torn, his shoes dusty from the streets. In his hand, he clutched something small and fragile, a paper flower, carefully folded and colored by hand. His eyes were wide with both nervousness and hope as he looked up at the towering mansion. Can I join the birthday?" he asked timidly, his voice almost breaking. "I don't have a gift, not a real one, but I made this. And maybe I could be her friend." The guard frowned, unsure if he should let the boy in. After all, this was the CEO's mansion, and the guests expected here were from powerful, wealthy families. But before he could speak, the CEO, who had overheard, stepped forward. Something in the boy's trembling voice, in his innocent offering, pierced straight through his heart. He walked toward the gate, his eyes softening as he looked at the boy. Without hesitation, he opened the door wider and said gently, "Yes, son, you're welcome here. Please, come inside." And for the first time that day, hope flickered in the air of the lonely hall. The boy stepped timidly into the grand hall, his worn shoes almost too shy to touch the polished marble floor. Emily's eyes lifted the moment she saw him, curiosity replacing the dull sadness that had clouded her face all evening. He walked toward her slowly, clutching the paper flower in both hands, as though it were the most precious thing he owned. When he reached her side, he smiled nervously and held it out. "It's not fancy," he said softly, "but I made it just for you." Emily stared at the flower for a moment, then reached out with trembling fingers to take it. Her lips curved into a small smile, one that grew brighter as she looked at the boy's kind eyes. She placed the paper flower gently on the table beside the untouched cake. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice lighter than it had been all night. The boy sat down beside her, and soon the room that had been drowned in silence filled with soft laughter. He told her little stories, funny things from the streets, moments that made her giggle until her eyes sparkled. Emily offered him the first slice of her birthday cake, and together they began to eat, sharing crumbs and smiles. From across the room, the CEO watched in awe. The sight of his daughter finally laughing, her face glowing with genuine joy, brought tears to his eyes. For the first time that night, the decorations, the cake, the mansion, all of it seemed complete. Not because of wealth, but because of one boy's simple kindness. As the evening drew to a close, the once lonely hall now carried the warmth of laughter and friendship. The balloons had begun to droop, and the candles on the cake flickered low, but Emily's heart felt lighter than ever before. She held the crumpled paper flower close to her chest, as if it were the most precious gift she had ever received. The CEO knelt beside his daughter, his eyes moist with emotion. He brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "Today you received something even greater than all the gifts I could buy you, kindness." His voice cracked, but his heart felt full. He turned to the boy, who sat quietly, unsure if he had done something special. The man placed a hand on the child's shoulder and said with genuine gratitude, "Thank you for being here. You gave my daughter the happiest birthday she could have ever wished for. From now on, you will never be alone. I'll make sure you have everything you need, school, books, a future. Consider this home open to you always." The boy's eyes widened, tears welling up, as Emily reached for his hand. Together, they cut the cake, their laughter filling the room at last. It wasn't the crowd of guests, the glittering lights, or the towering mansion that made the night special, it was the simple bond of two children who found joy in each other's company. In that moment, the CEO realized a timeless truth: true wealth is measured not in money, but in love, kindness, and the connections we make with others.